Back when I was still in high school, there was an abandoned old school near where I lived. The place was straight out of a ghost story, with the windows all boarded up and doors bolted shut. It looked like no one had set foot in there for ages. My friend Jake and I would always dare each other to go check it out, but we never did, until one rainy day, when we finally decided to do it. We were on summer break and had nothing better to do, so we packed some snacks and some drinks, and we started heading there. As we were getting there, a thunderstorm came in out of nowhere, but it didn't bother us. It actually made the idea of exploring the place that more exciting. We scoped out the school and found this old pipe running alongside the wall. It was pretty sturdy, probably used for maintenance back in the day, so we climbed it. We made it up to the roof and slipped through a window that someone must have pried open a while back. The inside was just as creepy as you'd imagine. Peeling paint, desks turned over, and graffiti all over. Every step we took, the floor creaked and groaned like it was telling us to get out. We had our phone lights on and started exploring around. The creepiest part was the basement. It was flooded and the stairs just disappeared under the water. It was like something out of a movie, seeing those stairs leading down into nothing. Jake dared me to go down, but no way was I touching that water. We poked around for a while, and just as we got into the gym, we heard footsteps coming from the doors on the other side of the gym. They were slow and heavy, like someone was taking their time, stopping and starting. It was weird because it sounded like just one person, not a bunch of kids messing around like us. Whoever it was, they were between us and the way we came in. We were trapped, unless we wanted to try and bust through some old boarded-up doors. There was no light coming from that direction, and we couldn't fathom why someone would come into a creepy place like this alone. We froze, trying to be as quiet as possible, holding our breaths and listening hard. When the footsteps stopped, we tiptoed across the gym, hearts racing like crazy. We peeked down the hall, our lights barely cutting through the dark, and saw nothing. We moved, real slow, towards the stairs up to the roof. Then, out of nowhere, we heard the sound of someone sprinting at us from the darkness. It was so sudden, so loud, that we got extremely freaked out. We didn't see anything, but we weren't about to wait around either. We dashed up the stairs, taking them two at a time. When we reached the 4th floor, we slammed the door shut and waited, listening. Nothing. No more footsteps, no more running, just silence. We climbed out the window, got back down the pipe, and didn't stop running until we hit the main road. We were out of breath, looking back at the school from a distance, trying to make sense of it all. But the more we thought, the less it made sense. We never figured out what was up with those footsteps or who had been running at us in the pitch dark, and honestly, I'm not sure I want to know. It was the most terrifying thing I've ever experienced. We promised each other we'd never go back, and you can bet we kept that promise. Every time I pass that school, I get that icy feeling in my gut, remembering that night. I have always been a big fan of Halloween ever since I was a kid. I loved dressing up in different costumes every year and going around trick-or-treating. Even as I got older, we always celebrated with my friends, going to parties, making costumes, and watching scary movies. One Halloween night a few years ago, my boyfriend Ben and I decided to skip the parties this year and try out something different. There was an abandoned hotel about an hour from us, which we always thought would be fun to explore after dark. Being Halloween night, we agreed that it's the perfect time to finally do it. We packed some food, a bottle of wine, and even some candles for an eerily romantic dinner in the penthouse suite of the old hotel. We waited until it got dark and made our way there. As soon as we arrived, We felt the creepy atmosphere of this big, dark building. The windows were shattered, and the whole place was shrouded in darkness. There was a fence around it and a no trespassing sign. We went around the fence to see if there was a way to get in and found a small opening where it looked like someone had used bolt cutters to cut through the fence. We were a bit nervous, but decided to go in anyway. We squeezed through the opening in the fence and made our way inside the hotel. We turned on our flashlights and started exploring. Immediately, we were hit with a strong, musty smell. The lobby was filled with old, decaying furniture, as if time had frozen in there. There was shattered glass and all kinds of trash on the floor. Even though the place was all messed up, you could still feel its history. We tried to imagine what it would have been like back when it was still functioning. We started exploring on the first floor, going room by room. The walls were falling apart and riddled with graffiti. At the one end of the hotel, on the first floor, there was a room which had a new door and lock on it. This was weird, as the building hadn't been used in over a decade. We tried opening the door, but it was locked. We went back to the staircase and made our way to the second floor. I started getting hungry by that point, so I told Ben that we should go find the penthouse suite and break out the food and wine. We made our way to the top floor, found the largest room, and lit our candles for our spooky romantic dinner. We stayed for a little while, and then decided to continue exploring the rest of the hotel. We went down the staircase, and about halfway down, Ben saw something through one of the shattered windows and called me over. I looked out and saw a group of 4 people outside the hotel, dressed in robes and hoods, standing in a circle while holding flashlights up in the air and chanting. We both got a bit creeped out, but since it was Halloween, we assumed that they were maybe doing some weird Halloween activity or planning to have a party inside the hotel. We contemplated whether to continue exploring since there were other people there now, and we didn't feel too comfortable. We decided to just leave, as we already had our little dinner, and we were in there long enough anyway. We kept going down the stairs, and eventually reached the first floor. As we got down, we saw the group, walking single file down the hall towards the locked door with their heads down, while still chanting. It looked really bizarre and creepy. We went towards the exit when they heard us, and immediately stopped and went silent. They turned around at the same time and stared at us. We nervously greeted them when one of them started walking towards us slowly, while the rest just stood there in silence. We couldn't see their faces as they were a bit far from us, but once the hooded figure got closer, it looked like a tall man. He had an old rag covering his nose and mouth under his hood. His robe looked old and scuffed. We stood there frozen, not knowing what to expect. He stopped around 6 feet away from us and whispered, "Go home." We turned around and exited quickly, while the man returned in a slow pace back to the rest of the group. We were really creeped out by them, so we went through the hole in the fence back to our car and drove away from there in a hurry. On the way back, we wondered who these people were and what they were doing there. Ben said it was probably some weird cult thing or something. Whoever they were, I still get chills down my spine every time I think about them, and sometimes wonder what they would have done if we hadn't left. A few years back, me and my buddy Mark decided to go and explore those old underground tunnels that were used during the war. They spread for miles under the city and were rumored to be haunted. Well, we didn't believe in ghosts or anything, so we thought it would be a thrilling adventure for Halloween. We had a small argument before we went, though. I told Mark that we should go during the day, but he insisted on going after dark. He said it would be creepier. I told him that it doesn't matter because it will be dark inside anyways, but he was very keen to go at night. I agreed, and once night fell, I left my house and headed to the tunnels. We met up at the entrance. And I gotta say, it was pretty spooky right from the start. The place was all dark and damp, with water dripping from the ceiling. We had the flashlights on our phones, but they didn't do much to cut through the darkness. We ventured deeper and deeper into the tunnels, the air getting colder and thicker. Mark was cracking jokes, trying to keep the mood light, but I could tell he was getting kind of freaked out too. As we explored, we stumbled upon some old rusty machinery and piles of crates. It was like stepping back in time. We tried to imagine what it was like for the people who had been down there during the war, probably scared out of their minds. After a while, we started hearing strange sounds, like someone hitting a large water pipe, and the noise was resonating through the tunnels. We brushed it off, thinking it was probably nothing, and continued exploring. A few minutes later, we heard more sounds coming from way inside the tunnels. This time it sounded like something metal was scraping against the walls of the tunnels. Mark and I looked at each other, getting more and more creeped out. We were quite deep inside now, as we had been walking for at least 20 or 30 minutes. We kept going, trying to shake off the unease. That's when we saw it. A flickering light in the distance. We thought it might be another explorer, so we followed it. But as we got closer, the light vanished, and we found ourselves alone in the pitch-black tunnels again. A few seconds later, we heard the same scraping sound, but this time, it felt much closer to us. "Hello? Is anybody out there?" I called out. Nobody responded. We decided to turn back, thinking we'd had enough of our Halloween adventure. We walked for a few minutes and retraced our steps, but nothing looked familiar. Panic started to set in as we realized we were lost. We tried calling for help on our phones, but there was no signal down there. We were trapped, and the eerie feeling of not being alone in there was overwhelming. I could see the fear in Mark's eyes, and I knew he could see it in mine. We kept walking, hoping to find our way out, but it felt like the tunnels were leading us deeper and deeper into the darkness. Suddenly, there was a loud thump behind us, like a metal pipe hitting the wall just feet away from us. We turned around and pointed our phones in that direction, and for a second it looked like there was someone else there walking behind us. We both freaked out and started running, not waiting to find out who it was. As we ran, we noticed the old machinery and piles of crates we'd seen earlier, so we knew we were now heading the right way. Soon after, we found our way back to the entrance and left in a hurry. We never went back to those tunnels, and we're still not sure if someone was actually in there, stalking us. The worst part about that night was the feeling of being lost, of someone lurking in the dark, and the fear that we might never find our way out.